Yes, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another brand new Rugby Muscle Podcast. In today's episode, we are joined by Matt Vickery of the Instagram account jump.throw.lift. This is probably not an account that you might have seen before, or you might have seen a few highlights, but he has a criminally small following for what great information he puts out. So I'd encourage all of you to go check out his Instagram. It is linked in the description below. If you want to check out anything from Rugby Muscle, also linked in the description below. But today's episode is a discussion with him on all things strength and conditioning. He's been in the sport in strength and conditioning for well over 2 decades at this point. So he's changed his mind on a lot of things. He's learned a lot of things. He is a true fountain of knowledge when it comes to sports performance, athleticism, building real world physical performance. I was going to say strength and conditioning, but we already agreed on this episode that we don't like that term. So absolutely invaluable episode for both young guys and older athletes to listen to really understand what it is you need to add or take away from your routine as far as physical preparation, your gym stuff, your fitness stuff, whatever you need for rugby performance. We discuss it all on this episode and really give you some valuable insights that I hope you can take away. If you don't find this episode at all useful, please do give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or if you're listening on YouTube, give it a thumbs up and let me know what you think in the comments below. All right, let's get into this episode with Matt Vickery, jump.throw.lift. Yeah, I've been following your Instagram account for a while, jump.throw.lift. How long have you been running that for? Because it looks like it's like you've got a good sort of ideology going down.
Yeah, not long, but I've messed about with it. It wasn't until lockdown I started actually putting out content where I thought people would actually benefit from. Before that, it was just me showing off, doing, plyos and lifting shit.
Yeah.
But I never really, I'm one of these guys, I never really thought online coaching was online programming is, but I never really thought online coaching was a thing because, I want to be there. I'm a hands-on coach, but then I realized then when all the technological advances that I'd ignored over the last 5 years, there was actually a pretty decent area to help and to educate online as well as in person,
Yeah, definitely. I've already hit record, so we might as well go straight into like your intro and background then, what you did before, career-wise, rugby-wise, athlete-wise, what you did before you lockdown and how you came to where you got to be now, if that works for you.
Yeah, mate. Okay. Yeah. So I've done nothing before, to be honest. So I qualified as a lifeguard, track coach, PT sort of variation when I was 18. And I've been doing it for like 25 years now. So in various guises, so it's the whole personal trainer thing. Because remember, strength conditioning wasn't a thing 25 years ago. Neither was the internet. So it was like dinosaurs. But if you wanted to educate yourself in any field, you had to go and like actually meet people or ring them up or buy their books or their video cassettes and stuff. So my sort of, I've always played rugby. So I'm from South Wales. So you kind of brought up playing rugby or nothing. And I've always been a keen track athlete. I kind of lost interest in rugby in my 20s. And what was interesting to me was, like I said, there was no real formal certifications in strength conditioning or any real education in it. But what I found was rugby athletes were training like bodybuilders and aerobic athletes. So we had endurance athletes combined with bodybuilders. And when I was in like rugby gyms, even when I wasn't playing for anybody in particular, people would look at me doing plyometrics like I was like a retard. I'm just jumping around and doing, Mac drills and acceleration stuff. And you had like semi-professional standard rugby players and above and professional standard actually looking at me like I'm crazy. They're like, what's the point of doing that? Rugby's about contact. And I'm like, I've always kind of thought rugby's about avoiding contact, but you're in the minority then.
That's a funny philosophy, even like just as a coaching thing, because you call rugby a collision sport, but it's also an evasion sport more than anything. And I think, if you like, we did ruck practice at training last night. I took the boys through some different ruck things, but we went through a 3-on-2 drill beforehand, and then we went back into the 3-on-2, and I'm like, look, if you can avoid contact, that's the best situation. You don't even need to ruck. You can go through and you can do the best stuff. So definitely, and obviously the agility stuff helps you take contact on your own terms as well, which is always going to be significantly better.
Yeah. What I like seeing at the moment, and I'm always seeing it for the last, like, maybe let's say 10 years, where rugby sort of evolved a little bit more into a more, let's just say athletic endeavor rather than a physical, but solely physical anyway. And you got people like, like recently, like Toby Faletau, number 8, great feet. You got Dom Brandt now for Harlequins, great athlete. Sam Simmons, great athlete. Back row athletes who are, Justin Tipperick, all these guys, they're great athletes. They're not just rugby players. They got great hands, they got great feet. Yeah, yes, they got the Bosch, so they can take a hit. Obviously, they can tackle hard. They're aggressive tacklers and ruckers and counter ruckers, but they've got skill sets which were more Islander or Maori type as it was 15 years ago. And now the entire world is hopefully understanding that, if you can, like you said, avoid collision, that's not a bad thing.
No, definitely not. And so I guess back in the day, did the guys watching you doing all the jumps, did they eventually think, oh, maybe this is a good idea and give it a go? Or
Definitely not. Absolutely not. So, I was at Richmond, and you had a lot of players there who were like kind of a big deal, back in sort of like 2000, 2001, just after, I think they'd just gone bankrupt actually at that point. We had international class players looking at me like, mate, you got it totally wrong. You should go on a track somewhere. So yeah, absolutely not. London Scottish and Richmond and I think London Welsh were at the time shared a training ground. And all I saw was just endless physicality, running around. I mean, the warm up for London Scottish was 2 laps of the pitch. Like that's not great.
No. And what's funny
We
is
still like that.
yeah. No, that's what I was going to say is like, you'll still like, I think like amateur level rugby now is just professional rugby, maybe like 10 or so years ago, things just trickled down. And so we're still far behind. And then you get the odd player that wants to make the best of themselves and will sort of go, but then they'll go to what the current guys are doing now, and they'll sort of like skip a preparation phase and they'll go straight into it as well. So there's a lot of a layered approach to be able to do this sort of stuff, I think. And the whole thing, it's like, it's either extreme that people are trying to do exactly what the professionals are doing right now, or it's old school and they're not really doing much of anything, which is crazy. But to me, and it's always been crazy, if you think rugby's never been not a physical game. Like it's one of the most physically demanding sports I think you can do. And when you ask, especially if you ask like people that aren't completely familiar with rugby, or they're not at least in the circle of rugby, they'll say, they'll always admire rugby athletes because it is an amalgamation of all these different things that you've got to do. So to then not do anything physically and just say, I'm just a rugby player and just be in terrible shape is kind of doing yourself a disservice, and maybe even the sport a disservice.
Yeah, but there's another side of that as well. So I worked with a young prop on Saturday, and he's going up to sort of semi-pro level. He wants to push his game on. He's a physical specimen. He's a big guy, tight head. There's no body fat on the man. He's lean. Physically, you look at him and think, wow, you're in great condition. But he can't run because he's actually built too much muscle mass. So he's gone the old bodybuilder route and he can't run. So what I got him doing sprint mechanic drills. His hip flexors, his glute medius, his Achilles, calf complex were all just burning out so rapidly because his perceived exertion of that particular drill was so high that his body just went flatline. He was pumped from doing A-skips. And, and it's really common, man. I see an awful lot. The guys just want to get as strong as they can. And then they completely forget that the most important qualities you can give somebody is try and make them a bit faster. You're not going to make them fast, but a bit faster, a bit more robust, a bit more coordinative, a bit of adding that agility and change of direction component. That's the game changer right there. It's not the extra 20 kilograms in your back squat or deadlift.
No, I think, especially with young athletes, it does come from like I always say, like I have a sort of strength first approach. I think I'd like to hear your thoughts on that afterwards, but it's like, I think, when we're talking about power, even when we're talking about power, even speed, where there's, force application to the ground, there is a level of strength that you need. And guys that listen to this podcast would have heard me almost say the exact same thing last week. you have to get, you have to get your strength level developed enough so that you've got a ticket. But that's it. You don't have to, you have to pay your ticket to entry or cross the barrier to entry and be strong enough. But once that's crossed, like pursuing all of your time in strength is kind of a fruitless endeavor, right?
Yeah, unless you're a strength athlete. That's
Yes.
pretty. If you're a powerlifter or a strongman or an Olympic weightlifter, brilliant. If you're a barbell athlete or a strength competitor, strength is all that really matters. Now, I had this really funny. So a few weeks ago, I was in the gym and this guy comes with his dad, and he said, "What could I have a chat to you about coaching my son?" And I said, "Well, okay, well, what's the deal?" He said, "Well, he's an open side flanker. He's not making the first team. He's in the second still, and it's a pretty big club." And he said, I'm just a bit concerned he's not strong enough." And I said, "Okay, well, where is he?" And he was in the corner. He's 18 years old, this kid. He's got 180 kilograms in his back squatting for 10.
Jesus.
Right? I said, "Mate, whatever's wrong with your son not getting selected for the first team, it's not fucking strength." I think I look at 240, 250, 1 RM based on those. So that's, it's probably, can he catch? Can he pass?
Yeah.
That's, look at your skill set.
Yeah, especially with rugby where, like, again, people think because of what they look at the top level and they just look at, it's very easy to look at these huge athletes and think, okay, that's what I need. But then you miss all the nuances of what goes on in a game. You can even get it from a fitness standpoint. I'll get people that will send me clips of their game or just inquiring, and they'll say, "Oh, I think that I'm not fit for some reason. I'm always gassed, even like 30 minutes into a game, and then I get back my second wind, and then again I get gassed towards the end of a game." And then you watch their footage, and they're running around like a headless chicken. Like you look at Richie McCaw back in the day, or good efficient flankers. Tom Curry's a perfect example. Like he seems to be everywhere because he's really decisive about his actions, and that's rugby IQ. That's not. I mean, obviously there is a level of fitness to get there, but yeah, there is something to be said. I think we've gone. I don't know if the pendulum swung too far towards, because it was, as you said at the beginning of your career, there was no real strength and conditioning for a sport like rugby, which is crazy. Now we've gone full hog, and we're, especially you see it in South Africa a lot, where they're picking guys for their provincial sides in the youth athletes, literally based on their metrics in the gym. And I think the pendulum's ready to sort of swing back, which I think
it is. I think it is, because if you look at guys, you got Marcus Smith, you got what's his name, George Ford. You got Bowden Barrett. You got like these are much smaller athletes than they were 10 to 15 years ago. I remember watching. I played against played with Butch James in a charity game, and the man was huge at 10 for the inbox back in the notes, and I'm like, what? And now you've got guys that at the top level, we understand it. We're not talking about top level, you and I. We're talking about lads, young lads, semi-pros, weekend warriors, amateur athletes. But they're not looking at the pro as much as they should do now. They look at the pro as it was 10 years ago. And it's like, I think there's room for top clubs to be a bit more open about their training philosophies and their methodologies. Like looking and seeing what are these guys, so young athletes can just look at it. I know there's footage on YouTube with bits and bobs, but if they're looking at big, clunky, heavy forwards, that's not the way the game's going.
No, I think I completely agree with clubs being more open, because I think it is actually, maybe it's not intending to be misleading, but it is. I'll see some of the All Blacks clips that they'll do, and they'll never quite show how deep they go on the squat. They'll never quite show the exact weight on the bar unless it's bragging about someone, which doesn't do anyone it's impressive, but it doesn't show for what is like the mean and the average. Like you go into a gym of any professional team, and yeah, there'll be some really, really impressive numbers because there'll be some freaks, but you'll also see a lot of average as far as just if we're looking at raw strength numbers. But that's because they're not strength athletes, they're rugby athletes. Yeah. Same thing for sprinting technique. Like we'll look at, a lot of athletes that I think we learn as rugby from other sports. So powerlifting, or for strength, we learn from powerlifting. For sprinting, we learn from track. But there's some just raw speed athletes out there that don't quite have the technique, but it's actually perfect for rugby because they need agility alongside the straight level speed. And I think that's That's interesting that you have your background a lot in track as well. So are there still things, because I'm always trying to figure out where we can learn, lots of little things that to bolster out a strength and conditioning. And is there anything that we're missing at the minute still? We're still far, like, behind from athletics?
I think at, at like elite level, you're going to say no. I mean, like Franz Bosch worked with the Welsh Rugby Union for a few years, and he had some big results there. And what I take from sprinting and working with track athletes, and I did a qualification with Dan Paff, with the
Mhm.
analytics qualification. So like each year I could top up on something different, something new. But that has been a consistency in my life. For 25 years I've been in this game in one region or another, is that people do not run well. And the perceived exertion of your body, if every time all you're interested in is force into the ground, bang, 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 that's great when you're 18 because you've got a natural elasticity to your stride. A lot of people have, some people don't. But if you're just focusing on force into the ground when you're sprinting, you're missing out on a hell of a lot. That flight time, that force into the ground, creating good positions to recycle that gait cycle and that gait mechanic to go again. You're going to get those repeat sprint qualities, and the perceived exertion is going to be like a 7 out of 10, an RPE sort of 7 compared to an RPE 10. And therefore, you're getting guys who are going to get gassed really quickly from running really badly. And he might look fine from the sidelines and think, oh, fuck, he's really fast. And yet he could be fast. But, I'm more interested in a guy who's 80% fast for 80 minutes of the match
Mhm.
than 100% fast for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever it is. And nobody's, we understand the game of rugby, ebbs and flows, and you get recovery. But just looking at a lot of athletes running, you look at someone like Zamet in Wales, and there's a lad at Newcastle now for England who's just got
Radwan.
amazing. Yeah, man, this just rapid. Those guys are, the Barrett brothers, or any Islander,
Mhm.
things for the All Blacks. But you see the way they run, and people always say the same thing to me. They always go, oh, it makes it look so easy. In the same way Ronaldo makes soccer look easy,
Mhm.
Well, it is easy for them because they got a wonderful gait mechanic. They got an understanding of what's required, or they're just genetic fucking freaks. And they just get that from their parents, and then they endorse it by adding speed and power to the intent, and the outputs then are amazing. And like I said, it's that rate of perceived exertion, which I tend to sort of throw down people's necks a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, it is funny to me that, like, I'll regularly get questions from people that ask, oh, it's either older athletes that are losing their speed, or it's younger athletes that need to get speed, and they're like, okay, I go to the gym 3 times a week. What can I do to get faster? And I'm like, well, how often are you sprinting? And the answer is, oh, well, I mean, I do rugby, but I'm like, no, you need to practice this new skill, and you don't just, it's like passing. You don't just go play a game of rugby and go, okay, now I'm going to practice my passing. No, you develop the passing in drills. The same
Yeah.
thing that should be said for speed, that unfortunately gets missed a lot. And I think overall, like, from chatting to you already, I can tell that, you know, you have a full understanding of what strength and conditioning is. And probably, I can imagine that maybe you don't even like that term because it doesn't really
No.
hold true to what it is. It's physical preparation rather than strength and conditioning. Um,
Yeah, I work with quite a lot of older athletes because I'm an old bastard, but I work with young lads and I work with older ones as well because, like, the online guys are all sort of my age and above, or roughly, sort of late 30s, let's say it's up to 52. I got a lad who's playing Masters, a guy's playing Masters. And they all came to me for the same reason. Because I love jumping, I love throwing shit around, I love sprinting, and I don't ever want to not do that. So I'm 43 now, and I'm still quicker than a lot of the guys that I coach in the youth and in the seconds. And I'm proud of that.
mhm.
If I go over 30 meters, I'm dead. But I'm over 10, 20, I'm on it. And the thing I see with these older athletes is that they almost take it as a given they're going to lose their speed.
Mhm.
So they often say to me online, or around a consultation, they say, I know I'm not as fast as I was. I said, well, what are you doing about that? Oh, well, it's just one of those things, you get older. I said, no, it's not. You're choosing to be less efficient, to be less elastic, to be less fast and less powerful. And the reason you're doing that is because you think now you've got to go full retard and go full strength. And you never go full retard. You've got to keep the bits in there that are actually game changing for the sport of rugby. You know, your bench press is not a game changer. Your 10-meter acceleration off the line can be a game changer in offense and in defense. So why would you not train that quality? And the other thing you say to me, TJ, is that I haven't got access to a field on weekdays, just on the weekends. What? It doesn't matter. You've got a street.
Yeah.
Good. I've got guys who I coach online doing. The one guy had a banded overhead primetime drill, sprinting down a close in Birmingham with delivery men and scaffolders watching him. I'm like, he said, what do I do? I said, well, who gives a fuck what they think? Just get it done. You've got to get faster. You know, if you've got a field, use a street. And in the gym, there's so many things you can do. Acceleration positions, you know, over 5 to 10 meters, you know, fake throws, banded acceleration, resisted accelerations, extensive plows, intensive plows. There's so many things you can do to get faster, but people would rather choose something more conditioning based or more strength based. Like I said, you're absolutely right. I don't really like the term strength conditioning, but people don't really understand anything else.
No.
If you say, well, I coach power, speed, and strength, I coach a bit of conditioning, but mainly that's on you. You know, I manage your stress levels. That's not a job title anyone's going to remember ever, you know?
I hate strength. Well, like conditioning is, it's like the funniest word as well. Because like, what does that even mean? Like strength is part of conditioning because you need to get stronger to be, if you're conditioning yourself to be a rugby player, then, you know, that it all goes in. It's a stupid term, but we're stuck with it now. And that's what we have to go with. You mentioned about, I guess we'll see if we can piece this out a little bit more, but the importance of speed and power, particularly for older athletes. So you're saying that younger athletes are generally quite more responsive just to being naturally faster. And we'll see this with people that don't, you know, they'll go to the gym, but they don't really work their speed ever. They don't take themselves as serious with that sort of stuff.
No.
And so do they
get
faster with technical improvements as opposed to like, you know, raw physical improvements? Or is it that we're maintaining those raw physical attributes that they can still maintain their, or even gain their speed?
I think what I like to do is, the way I coach people is I like break into two parts, right? And I say, like, we're going to focus on speed, and there's going to be two aspects to speed and to plyometrics. And I bring them into the same banner. And I'll say, look, we're going to work on two physical qualities, elasticity. We're going to work on power, which is obviously force times speed, right? Force times velocity.
Mm-hmm.
And people understand power. They totally understand power. But then you say, right, we're going to work on elasticity. And they don't understand what that is. And I say, okay, we're going to work on ankle stiffness. And they don't understand what that is. They think it's a tight muscle. So if you've got to word it in a particular way where people actually buy into it, you say, like, you know, we're trying to build robustness around potentially the most important fucking thing in your body for an athlete, your Achilles tendon. We're trying to keep that as robust as possible for as long as possible and as responsive as possible for as long as possible. So you can distribute the force you've created in the gym into the ground with a nice elastic, bouncy response rather than a flat pancake slap every damn time you hit the ground.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's how I like to explain it to people.
That makes sense. I use it as more of instead of dropping a soft spongy ball on the ground, like, you know, it doesn't matter how strong, I don't know how strong a sponge can be, but if you drop a spongy ball on the ground versus dropping, you know, a real solid rubber ball on the ground, like which one bounces up much higher, then you're training that quality. And so obviously the strength comes into it because the more dense that ball is, the better it's going to be at bouncing. But at the same time, you have to work both at the same time. I think that works as well for a lot of other athletes that they're scared of putting on mass and then slowing down as well. And actually, I think, well, if you're not even training this stuff in the first place, there's a good chance you'll get strong. I mean, you'll get faster, right?
Yeah. And the thing is, you know, with youth athletes, everything works. You know, so there's no skill in making someone stronger when they're 18, you know, because that's just, like Charlie Francis said, it's as difficult as falling off a board in water.
Yeah.
You know, not complicated at all. There's not much harder making someone faster at 18 either, because they've got the elasticity because their tendons are young and useful, but they don't have the technical ability perhaps, or they don't have the strength, you know, because of course I downplay strength, but I love training, you know, I love training strength, and there's limited gains at a certain level is what I'm getting at. But with a youth athlete, you know, if he's got a decent deadlift for a rugby athlete, you know, we see whenever he gets to like, numbers, strength standards. I don't like that. I don't care too much about that. If someone's got a 150 kilogram deadlift, but they got an 11-foot broad jump, I'm happy with that. Or, just a 1.5 or per second, like 10-meter acceleration.
Mm-hmm.
They're fast, they're powerful, they're strong, probably enough, but we can add a bit of body armor on top of them.
Yeah, I go back and forth on strength standards. I'm actually going to put something out in the next coming weeks on YouTube about strength standards for rugby players, and it's going to be layered and complex because that's just the way it has to be. Because you can't and I'm still going to preface it with I'm not really happy with doing this, but this is what people want to see because we like to deal with numbers, and I think that's why we like strength training in general as opposed to the power stuff, because it's a lot easier to measure. You can see the 1.25 kg plates being added to the bar each week, or you can see the extra reps going in the logbook. Whereas with power work, and even medicine balls and stuff, you can't quite see efficiency as obvious, or the slight increase in speed as obvious, which is annoying, but that's just the way it is. And I think you still got to make it fun, and it's just because you can't see an obvious progression doesn't mean that progression isn't there. And I think you just got to have faith in the system.
Yeah, I mean, I like to metric everything, to be honest. So it goes from a 10, a 20, a 30, a 40. It's more for my interest and for their competitive nature and fun.
Yeah.
More than caring too much about the actual metric. Med ball throw is the same. I have a tri-line to 22 meter, 6 kilogram med ball challenge. See, if you could throw it over your head backwards and hit the 22, you're pretty bloody powerful. That's a decent throw. Beyond that, we measured and we record it. I remember I did a course with Poliquin when I was like 22, and it was like, if you're not assessing, you're only guessing. Yeah. And I had that like tattooed on my forehead for years. That's not overly important for certain things, but I still like to see it when a program is working. And certainly if some of those physical qualities start to go the other way, and if the med ball goes from, overhead throw goes from 22 meters to 19, I'm going to be a bit concerned about that with my programming.
Mm-hmm.
If they've gained or lost weight, we'll take that into account. But yeah, I mean, I like med ball throws from the chest and overhead. I like to stand in the same place when someone's doing a vertical, so I can monitor exactly how high it is against the rugby post and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So they're semi-metrics. They're not 100%, but they're good enough. And they're fun as well.
Yeah, and they're good enough to see some sort of progression. I even think if you get a video of medicine ball throws against the wall or whatever, just make sure it's not drywall, because that's been a mistake a few times with people. But if you can actually, like I said, you can't really see it. I'm saying you can't see it on a logbook, but if you actually compare sets of videos, the naked eye can see a much more efficient mover, particularly when you're comparing them, side by side or one after the other, or how much faster the reps are going, how much faster you're recoiling. That sort of thing works really well. I want to change, or want to keep going along this line of what you're doing with speed and power and stuff, but I want to understand a little bit more about how you differentiate from, because you said you work with younger athletes that are trying to make it and seeing if they can get to a semi-professional or professional. And you also said you work with old bastards. So I'm assuming there's a deal of differentiation with how you train those guys. You want to touch on that a little bit for me?
Yeah. So the main, it's okay. So the main difference, let's take two sort of avatars. We've got an 18-year-old rugby lad who wants to get up to the semi-pro level in his club, and we've got a 45-year-old masters player.
Yeah.
The template of my program is exactly the same for everybody, whether they're a fighter, a rugby athlete, a lacrosse player. The template runs the same. It goes static warm-up, dynamic warm-up. It goes MAC drills, so sprint mechanic drills. It goes elasticity, like pull goes, etc. It goes power, it goes strength, it goes hypertrophy, it goes conditioning. You know the score with that. It's all the same. The difference is that I think volume, priority, and stress. And so if I've got a 45-year-old rugby masters athlete who's got 3 kids, a mortgage, and a shitty job he doesn't like anymore, his emotional stress is going to be very, very high. So his session is going to be low volume, the lowest I can get away with, perhaps even multiple sessions of a half an hour through the week, rather than 2 sessions with the 18-year-old whose stress levels are, is he going to get laid this weekend? How many pints he can drink before spewing? And I know this does taking the piss a bit. Everyone's got their stress, everyone's got their shit, but you got to manage the stress and volume and duration of sessions and frequency of sessions. That's how I change between those age groups.
Hmm. I think what you said there as well and we've spoken about it already kind of with the older athletes, and what they tend to do is they tend just to keep training the same and do everything the same, and they'll see their numbers go down because these other things in their life are changing, so they're not able to cope with the same volume or, get away with the same shit that they did when they were younger. And then they either just give up, or they don't understand what's happening. And a lot of time they just give up and they say, well, I guess I'm old now. I guess I have to be either injured, or I guess I have to get, like, I'm not going to be the athlete that I was. Whereas, like, actually you have no choice but to do less, even though it's a tricky game, because you want to stay at a level where you're still competing.
Well, I think he's not a rugby guy. He's a BJJ. He's a roller, right?
Mhm.
So he's got 6 days a week BJJ, right? He's a fireman as a job. He's got wife and kids. He's got fireman fitness challenges he takes on all the time, like crazy fucking endurance events, almost like CrossFit on crack,
Mhm.
Then he comes to me and says, I want to train like 5 days a week.
To pause here, I have no idea where this paused. Apparently the recording paused on 30 minutes. That's annoying. We'll figure it out. Let's go back to, can we resume from what I just said about agility? So you said, your background is more in athletic. And so obviously in athletics, we're dealing with a lot more straight line speed. That's not what you see as much in rugby. Rugby is, as you said already, acceleration, but it's acceleration in different directions, which is also known as agility. So how do you go about programming for that? I'm sorry for the pause.
Yeah, mate. So like I said, I think terminology matters. It's change of direction, agility, two different things.
Yep.
Low level change of direction when you're first learning it with kids, for example, is strength training. So to decelerate, and re-accelerate your mass requires a fair bit of strength. So that's a constraint-based approach. And we give them, constraint-based drills. They got to touch cones and whatever drills. There's a million drills, but the main thing is to not coach the drill, but to coach the skill, as Lee Taft says. And I really love that explanation of it. It's like, well, what are we after from this drill? Well, it's changing direction with different strategies, different movement patterns, different body angles, different shin angles, producing force maximally in different positions. Agility, then, of course, is random in nature. So then it's like your cone-based drills, or your constraint-based drills, sorry, are just running the colors, right? Waving hands, verbal cues, getting them to react quickly with no preordained plan. And that's agility. Now, what I like to do is with people is like to have what called compromised position starts. So they could be on a knee, they could be lying down, and from straight on, side on, and then you jump, turn, and sprint. And you organize your body as efficiently as possible on that push-up position. You push up off the floor, you spin, you accelerate in the sort of angles and the trajectory you would do from a 3 or 2 point start. So it all comes back to linear speed. It's just organizing your pelvis first.
Yeah.
So if I'm lateral, and then I pop, and it's just giving those strategies so they can appreciate that. And like you said, then, if you think about sidestepping, if you want a great adductor strengthening, isometric strengthening exercise, a sidestep is a brilliant exercise,
Mhm.
So it all comes back down to strength and linear speed, like we mentioned earlier. It's just strategies.
Yeah. And combined with, like, rugby IQ, because
Yeah.
I mean, as you say, agility is chaotic. So what you're doing is you're reacting to what your opponent's giving you. You could have the most agile guy in the world, but if he's not, if he has no idea what defenders tend to do, or how where to spot gaps as he's running, then that agility or that change of direction skill is useless.
Yeah, and that's when your strength comes in, just to smash through the middle. Just
Yeah. But that's why you start with the basic stuff. Like, people love, and we're in the trap of social media already now, and I don't know if it's ever going away, but like that's the stuff that gets views, are like cool different interactive things, that partner drills where they're working on, and that stuff, like, is a good development tool to use to build in from the basic skills to get to the other stuff. But if you don't have the basic skills, which kneeling starts and stuff like that really do help the body understand. and if you don't have the basic technique, as we've already said, the stiffening of the ankles, that sort of stuff, then you're kind of wasting your time because you're just kind of still doing the same thing. You're going in a chaotic environment. You're never going to learn in a chaotic environment. So you have to keep it simple first.
Yeah, exactly that.
Cool. Speaking of keeping it simple, you're a strong guy. You're, as you said, you're outpacing a lot of the youngsters. And I think you would consider yourself a very advanced athlete. But what I don't see in your training, or what I do see in your training, is a lot of simplicity and not a lot of, advanced training techniques. Young guys particularly are attracted to advanced stuff, but I think older guys as well, once they get older, they think, okay, now, instead of, they've already skipped that part where they need to understand recovery, they've gone straight into, okay, now I'm advanced, I need to do advanced stuff to get advanced results. Do you think that's the case? Do you think athletes need advanced training techniques, or do you see the beauty in simplicity?
Bit of both. If you're talking about advanced techniques as being like French contrast training, which is my favorite modality for increasing power, because it's efficient for a lot of guys who are semi-pro, who've got jobs, who've got wives and kids. It gives the biggest bang for your buck, because you can go in, you can warm up, you can hit your French contrast model, and you can leave. And you're probably going to be maybe a half an hour in the gym. So I love the simplicity of that. But of course, it's actually a very complex modality. And you've got to either get to that point to use a French contrast model by getting, just going through complex training, contrast training, then going to French contrast. And that could take you, a couple of months, a couple of years, depends where you are. So the answer I would say is, if you're talking about advanced techniques as being that sort of example, then yes. If you're talking about advanced techniques being some bell end lying on a bench with a dumbbell in one hand, balanced on a Bosun ball in the other foot, then the answer is 100% no. Because that's not advanced techniques. That's just a lack of training knowledge and efficiency. And it's just clickbait.
Do you think like a lot of this comes about from bodybuilding being such a meat and potato sport, right? Like adding mass is just correct me if you disagree, but it's just a case of getting in enough volume and enough calories for the body to grow, creating some level of anabolism and whatever, right? So that's really, really, really easy to do. So I think it can get boring. So what the bodybuilding culture has sort of done is create things like, triple drop sets or giant sets and all this stuff, which they're all tools that you could use to actually probably just be more efficient, but they've used them all as to create them as like advanced techniques that will, same thing for strength, right? You just said, going out, jumping out of a boat and hitting water is about as difficult as it is to get a young athlete stronger. So do you think that like a lot of this has just come about because it just to make this stuff more entertaining?
Yeah. Simple as that.
Yeah.
Yes. I remember going on a course, and it was Polygon again, and it was with Paul Check, and they had Swiss balls, and they had that grainy video footage of, remember Christian Cullen for the All Blacks?
Mm-hmm.
He was a fullback back in the day, super strong guy, questionable. All the guys in the All Blacks were like questionably big compared to everybody else. They were all stood on Swiss balls with 20 kilogram dumbbells in each hand, squatting, stood on a Swiss ball, squatting with 40 kilos. And I'm watching this video in the gym, and I'm like, this is the shit. This is amazing. They're stable. Look at all the sort of connective tissue and the stabilization muscles are switched on. And there's this old Hungarian powerlifter looking at it with me, and he's like, this is bullshit. They're lifting 40 kilograms. I'm like, no. They're on a ball. He's like, this 40 kilograms. You don't play sport on a ball. And my whole belief system was shattered in one sentence. And I'm like, of course it does. It's so stupid. So that's one side of it. The other side of it, then, you've got the real pedants. And I've been both through my career, and I've changed my view on a lot of things. But one of the things that I was told when I was younger was, that Vergashansky quote of, you can't do plyometrics until you've got a 2 times bodyweight back squat. And I was like, that's so unfair, because I want to do jumps, but I can't apparently. But of course, his context, what Vergashansky meant was that you can't use the shock method because it doesn't work really well when you've got a 1 times bodyweight back squat, but it works really well when you've got a 2 times bodyweight. So save it until you've exhausted all the other modalities and techniques, and you get to that point where it's really useful, and you've stressed your system so much that nothing else works quite as well as this will do. And that's where refused again. It's like that whole pedantry of, oh, you can't use chains on your squat because you don't squat 200. That's bullshit. Chains are fun. Use chains. Bands are fun. So there's two sides of the.
I think it's also a case of like, to me, it all comes down to efficiency, right? So if you're looking at all these advanced techniques and you just don't need to do, why do it? Like, why? Or if you're looking at some sort of crazy programming thing where you've got to collect more data, if you can get faster sprinting, when you're a younger athlete by just increasing your deadlift and then going out to run it naturally, like, why would you not just do that? Like, and then you can take the time over time to adjust your technique or to do other sort of special techniques and exercise to progress it. But like, keep what? Because actually
Lose the audio. Lose the audio. There's rustling going on. Like, there you go.
And what we're going to do, like that back.
That's better.
Oh, okay. This bloody. We still good?
Yeah, that's much better, mate.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, I think what a lot of people I think it's just all comes down to efficiency. And a lot of people tend to look at extra special techniques or different techniques and they think, okay, that's the missing thing in my training and that's going to get me better. Whereas actually, like, just getting better is already sets you ahead of most people. Most people are going in the gym and they're doing the same old, or they're not even in the gym and they're slowly getting worse. The fact that you can make improvement is a really good thing. So keep doing things that keep improving you, and slowly over the months, over the years, add in extra things to keep that, graph going up in the direction that you want it to go to keep you improving. Because at the end of the day, if you can get better just doing a few lifts, just do those few lifts and then, save your other, you've got then extra time for recovery or extra time to work on your skills. Like, there's no point pumping up already pumped up tires. There's no point doing anything more than that. So then focus on the engine or focus on whatever it is that or the chassis or whatever else it is that can improve your performance. That's not to say that you shouldn't, like, you should go out and flat tires, like, make sure that they're pumped before you go. But at the same time, you don't have to get anything you don't have to look at the advanced stuff just because it looks sexy.
I 100% agree. 100%.
I think it's more, again, a lot of it comes back to efficiency. Like, I really like to use, myo reps.
Yeah.
So I use those a ton because it's just an easy way to get in a lot of volume. Sometimes it can be extra fatiguing, but it's an easy way to get in a lot of volume in just a few minutes as opposed to 10, 20 minutes for 3 different exercises. You can get that done in 5 to 10 minutes easily.
And also, it doesn't even have to be as complicated as people make out either. So training efficiency for me is, okay, I'm going to do upper body today, right? So I want something powerful. So I'm going to say, let's say I'm going to do a med ball throw against the wall, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I want to pair that with a core exercise because that's what I like to do. And if you give people core exercise at the end of their workout or ab exercise, we're going to call them, they won't do them because they'd rather go home. So you pair them with the power exercise, as long as it's not, a strength speed stimulus, and it's a legitimate speed, strength, or power stimulus, which is not going to be affected by the core fatigue. So let's just say we've thrown the med ball into the wall, and then we do a long lever, stir the pot with the med ball. We've used the med ball again. So that's efficiency, right? So then you go, right, okay, my main lift today is going to be the bench. I've got to do 4 sets of 5, let's say, at 80%, right? If you're a percent worker, RP 6 or 7, whatever it is. You do your sets, you finish up. What do? You don't need to walk to the other side of the gym and go to a lat pull down. You pair then something like a floor press with a chin up because it's right there. You don't have to deload the bar. You don't have to just take a couple of weights off. And then you walk across to the dumbbell rack and you do like some vertical pressing and you do some horizontal pulling with like a bench row. So again, you're being efficient. You're pairing exercises that are really quick, back to back, bosh, bosh. You're not walking from one end of the gym or upstairs, downstairs. You're just doing the stuff right there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where program design fails, when it's so complicated. I've got a rule of thumb. If I look at your program and it's more than, depending on goal, obviously, but more than 8 exercises, and I'm being generous there because mine usually about 6.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure you don't know what you're doing. There's obviously caveats to that as well. Would be different different modalities of, mobilizations or whatever it is, but the meat and potatoes of the workout, if it's 10 to 12 exercises, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I think that comes from the same psyche that gives people or that makes people do advanced techniques because they feel like they're missing out on something. And so
Yeah.
I'll always see that with people when they'll send me their program or we'll do a consultation and I'll say like, no, you don't need this much. And they're completely scared of, I know this, I have the same, I can completely understand the mindset because I was the same, you think, oh, if I only do 2 sets of bench, there's no way I'm going to get stronger. I'm going to get weaker. My chest is going to shrivel up. I used to be petrified, and because that's just the way the fitness industry is, because it's all so ingrained with these top-notch athletes promoting all this nonsense.
And the third right people, and he's got a 140 bench, 150 bench press, and he weighs like 100 kilograms. Let's just say it's 150 kilogram bench press. Well, I'm happy with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the next few weeks, he can come into the gym, work up to a heavy single, which is around about that weight, and he's maintaining his strength. And when his strength starts to deteriorate, then we can add a few reps to that particular exercise. It's really fucking simple, and it's nowhere near as complex as people like to make out.
I think people also get wrapped into their own results emotionally, and they don't like the idea of, what do you mean I only have to do 2 sets of bench? Like, no way. Because we like what we're already good at. And so therefore we're going to keep doing what we're already good at. Well, if that's like already good enough and you're investing time into that is much better spent elsewhere, then you're actually wasting your time.
Well, like my mindset changed on direct calf training a few years ago. So I never believed in direct calf training. I always thought if you were doing enough sprint work and Mac drills and pogo, enough stimulus, and you didn't need it. Then I started looking at Alex Natera's work, and I'm like, oh, okay, maybe there's some validity to this. Then I started utilizing those techniques in my own training and realized I feel like my ankle stiffness has gone through the roof. It was actually, it deteriorated quite a lot. I just hadn't felt it. And I videoed myself doing 3-point starts, and the first step, the ankle is stiff, the heel is holding it tight, whereas before it wasn't. So my mind has changed a lot on different training modalities over the years. You just got to keep on challenging yourself and not, like I said, leaning towards your biases.
Yeah, and continually add things in that if they make sense to you, like if you can think you can see a progression, then go for it. But you're doing it out of like a positive mindset rather than a fearful one. Like, oh, I've got to add this in because this is the thing that I've been missing this whole time.
On the flip side of that as well, I always said to people, if you can't explain why a particular exercise or drill is in your program, it shouldn't fucking be in there. You've got to justify every single thing that you're going to spend time on in the gym or on the field, making you better. And if you can't justify it, it shouldn't be there.
Yeah, which goes back to that efficiency that we were talking about already. Like, people just do stuff. I think people do stuff just because they copy what other trainers have done, and they don't really think about it. And I think too many people don't even have like actual goals. Like they don't take the time to think. They just go to the gym because they say, "Oh, gym's good for rugby, strong rugby." That's it. They don't think, "Oh, actually, speed might help a lot more, or power might help a lot more, or getting aerobically in shape, or getting my condition up to scratch will help a lot more." They just copy what they see other people doing. As we already mentioned, like it's not overly open what professional rugby players are really doing.
No, and I've been a powerlifter, and I've been a strongman competitor, and I've been a sprinter, so I've got a decent lens. If I'm going to pick one physical quality, give me speed every day of the week. Because like I said, the speed work, if you're sprinting frequently enough, accelerating, change of direction, work, max velocity, you're getting enough strength work for the lower limb. You can top up with the bits and bobs we mentioned, but give me speed every day over strength, because the strength is so easy to hold on to, it's so easy to gain. Genuine speed, and you're not going to make people fast, you can make them faster, but that shit deteriorates after the age of 28, 29. They all start to go downhill with the speed. The strength, conversely, tends to go up because, of course, we start to favor the things that we think will get us better.
Mm-hmm. I think on top of that, it's also like speed is so good because it actually makes you fitter. because when we're looking at
Yeah,
repeat speed ability, I think I said this on last week's podcast. They you look at the studies and you see the people that actually have the best repeat speed ability, they're just already really slow. So they're going from, they're going from 6 to 6
yeah,
to 6 to 6, and they're maintaining 6. Whereas, you've got one guy that's a 10 and he drops down to a 9.5 and then a 9. That's seen as as a less fit person, but actually, because they're so fast, they're running rings around the people that are 6 anyway. You have to put
that's
less
what.
effort in, and you're becoming more efficient. 100%. I could speak to a lot of what you've spoken about today. I'm really enjoying this. I guess I want to go back to, you said you've learned a lot in your career and changed your mind on a lot of things. I always think that's a good sign rather than a bad sign, because quote from Dan Cottrell, who stole it from someone else, was that you get a lot of coaches that say they've got 10 years of experience, but actually they've just got 1 year of experience 10 times because they never learn it. And I think that's so true. So just to know that, and I'm always fascinated thinking about, like, what am I doing right now that I think in 5 years' time is absolute bullshit, or something that I think, oh, maybe I've done this wrong. Because more than ever now, and I'm sure you're probably the same, you're more and more confident in what we're actually getting people to do, and really happy with, like, the rationale behind it. But there's going to be stuff that we're going to have to change our mind on. So, but what are some of the, or if you could just name one of the most important things or the biggest thing that you've changed your mind on throughout your career?
The one thing I mentioned earlier was the calf training. That's one
Mm-hmm.
thing. The other thing is everyone's got a bias, right? So even if you don't know you've got a bias, you've got a bias.
Mm-hmm.
But I always believed, that powerlifting was the basis of a good athlete. So the big 3 lifts. Now, that's not to say I don't use them still. Of course I do. But now I'm just as happy with using like dynamic effort method instead of cleans. Like a dynamic effort method deadlift, right? If you got someone pulling 140 for 8 sets of 3, I'm okay with them not doing power cleans. I'm okay with them not doing heavy deadlifts. And I think if I used to say I've changed one thing, it's my ability to let go of biases and say, like, I don't particularly like Olympic weightlifting. I was taught badly as a kid. I've ruptured both biceps off the bone, and I can't take a catch position, right?
From a clean?
No, from a clothesline from one, from a deadlift from the other, and actually the third one that finally did was 10-pin bowling with my kid. So that's like not the coolest story, but I used to have real biases towards like powerlifting, towards back squat, towards power cleans, because even though I did them really badly, I was still adamant that was the thing you had to do. And then I was like, wait a minute, I got a banded 130 kilogram deadlift here, which I'm ripping off the ground at max speed. It's exactly the same. I'm just keeping hold of the bar. I'm not catching it. So as long as my numbers, my speed, and my VBT is up, well, I don't care about that. And then I go, okay, well, what if I don't like doing deadlifts? What if I want to use a trap bar and just do some loaded trap bar jumps? Same stimulus. There's no difference. So anybody who says different, come back and talk about me in 15 years' time. Now, if you say that Olympic weightlifting is the thing you have to do to create strength, speed, stimulus, or if somebody else says something the opposite, it's somewhere in between. If someone's good at Olympic weightlifting, let them do it. If someone doesn't like it, then don't. It doesn't fucking matter. It drives me crazy, these arguments that we have. But that's the difference. I think the difference, I wouldn't name an exercise or a modality or a technique. I'd say my ability to not have quite as many biases as I used to. And if someone comes to me and says, I love Ollie lifting, I'm really good at it, I'm like, fine, program it. If someone comes to me and says, I'm not good at Ollie lifting, I'll say, well, it's a sport. You're not playing that sport. Let's get the stimulus and the outputs from something else.
Yeah. As a rule of thumb, like, I've competed in Olympic weightlifting. I do enjoy it. I've come away from it just because it is quite brutal, and it's, the more I travel around, it's difficult to do in commercial gyms. But I still enjoy it. But for the vast majority of my athletes, it's not even a conversation we have to bring up, because the learning curve, particularly if we're just doing it online or if they're going about it on their own, there's just too much risk of us not getting the benefits, versus if we're doing, Dimmel deadlifts, if we're doing, different jumps, different jump squats, different movements, whatever it is. Like, I know they're getting the benefit from those. I'm not always sure, unless I'm seeing crisp technique, if they're getting the benefits from, unless it's a power snatch where it's just a real quick power snatch. I do enjoy those, But again, they're only thrown in fairly infrequently. But I agree, like the arguing that you either absolutely need it or you should never do it is kind of redundant at this point.
Do you know what the most stupid comment I've listened to, which was from a pretty high level S&C coach? I wasn't speaking to him, but I was in the room at the time. And he was arguing the case for Olympic weightlifting for rugby players. And I overheard the comment, and he said, well, one of the best things that people don't appreciate is the fact if you're hitting a 150 power clean, you're catching that 150 kilograms. So you're absorbing that force. And then, of course, that's a great thing for rugby because it teaches you to absorb force. I'm like, a tongue gun at full tilt will teach you to absorb force.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need a fucking barbell to teach you how to do that, mate. You know, the impact you're going to get on the field, you're trying to negate those impacts in the gym. You're trying to add more stress to the system. It's so stupid.
It's funny. That's I've heard the same sort of thing, but it's like, and I understood it like probably incorrectly from what they were trying to say. I think they were trying to say, you're catching it and you're using your whole body. But I understood it as like, oh, okay, maybe, so that means I could just do like a Dimmel deadlift and then like a depth drop of some point, because that's the absorption of the force probably more efficiently and more likely what you're going to find in rugby. You don't need 150 kilos to do that. If you're just stepping off a step, high enough step and absorbing the force into the ground, that's a lot more like the absorbing a force you're going to find in a rugby match.
You want to talk me about force absorption, then altitude landings.
Yeah.
I get that. Step off a box, stick the landing. No, I don't. And again, there's big arguments about, tall to short landings or snap landings, whatever they call them. They're not specific to athletic development. They don't teach you how to land. Well, no, they don't. But maybe you're not doing them for that reason. Maybe you're doing it just to add a little bit of hamstring robustness.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a bad tool for that. You don't have to do them. But altitude land, great way to get those hamstrings to fire up.
Yeah, definitely. I think, as you said, that it goes to the whole approach of like everything can work if you justify it. And it's the same as you said, if you're assessing someone else's program, it's, why are you doing a squat? Well, because I've got to do a squat and a bench and a deadlift. Why are you not doing a rear foot elevated split squat? Because maybe you've only got access to dumbbells, or maybe you haven't got access to as much weight, or maybe you've got one leg that's significantly smaller or weaker than the other. So many tools. And I think you mentioned it right at the beginning. It's movement patterns. You need a push, a pull, a hinge, a squat, whether that's a specific bench press, squat, deadlift, only really matters if you're a power lifter. Otherwise, if you're a rugby player, like you've just got to use those movement patterns, right?
You know what? Like I like to, so you got push, you got pull, and you got vertical, horizontal.
Mm-hmm.
You got hinge, you got squat, you got lunge, you got rotation, and you got gait. Now, those are the 7 ones I run with, right? And when people say to me, I train gait, what do you do? Lunge walks. No. I do farmer's carries. Nah, that ain't gait. What do you do for gait? Do you sprint? Oh, no. Do you do Mac drills? No. So what are you doing for gait? Nothing. So people love to talk about squatting. And you know what? I think one of the things we've got at the moment is there's a lot of people out there and they are giving solutions to problems that don't really exist. When you're talking about, you have a squat, okay, yeah, but you've got to have this squat, this squat, this squat, or this squat. And it's got to be the squattiest of squats or the hingiest of squats.
Mm-hmm.
Pick one, mate. Keep your squat squatty, keep your hinge hingy. But if you want to do box squats, that's a very hingy squat. And that's got a benefit. And if you want to do a heels elevated split squat, goblet squat or front squat, that's a very quad dominant squatty squat. That's fine too. But we're really at the moment picking the minutiae out of things whereby, a squat is going to be, any type of squat is going to be better than a squat you don't do.
Yeah, 100%. I think, and technically as well, again, probably from this bodybuilding background where we're trying to over complicate things or make things a little bit more entertaining, or even with a strength background, like you've got Squat University, and that's not to knock Aaron Horschig, but like there's like it's one movement pattern. Why I don't think we need a university to go to really delve into it, and especially not people that aren't powerlifters or aren't getting paid to squat. It just doesn't make sense to me.
There's 2 sides to that as well. Like you said, he'll correct a 2 millimeter hip shift and say that's really important. And that's exactly that. You've just read my mind kind of thing there, because those are the problems that we don't need solutions for.
Yeah.
A 2 mil is neither here nor there for athletes, you know. And then, but then you got the other side of things. Then you got guys like Adam Meekins, and I really like him, but he's like, lift how you want. It doesn't matter. Just you'll build tolerance, tissue tolerance, and that's great advice. But the pair of them are doing things which, if they just give some context to it. Now, I agree with Meekins. I used to do bent back lifting, so I used to lift Atlas stones. And I specifically did bent back lifting for a while to try and get my lumbar erector stronger. That's not to say that's the most efficient way to lift weight off the ground. But they don't say that. They just say, do this, you know, it doesn't matter about technique. And on the other side, it's like, it's all about technique. And again, the unhappy and unpopular middle ground is where the truth actually lies.
Always.
Your technique doesn't have to be world-class, steady going kind of technique. But equally, it shouldn't be cat's back shit show, you know, because you're not going to lift much weight with that particular type of technique.
No, it's the same like politics, right? If stuff is in the middle, it doesn't get any traction, doesn't get any likes or clicks. That's why the popular stuff is always on the crazy ends of the spectrum. For technique, my rule of thumb is, if I am looking from, you know, across the room and it looks good enough, then that's good enough. Like that's it really. You can always make slightly technical. If I can see a technical adjustment, I'm actually looking across the room. If I can make a technical adjustment from across the room, or I can see something that might need to be adjusted, that's what we do. But otherwise, like there is no point in picking out the minutiae. It's just getting more efficient, getting stronger, and the body will figure that out as well. For the most part.
The difference is when you're working with kids, you know, and again, but the anti-Olympic weightlifting argument is it takes too long to coach. Fuck, I can coach a snatching for a kid in 5 to 10 minutes. That's not an argument. That's a bullshit argument. That's a lazy approach for someone who perhaps doesn't know how to do it or can't be asked. But with kids, when you're working with young athletes, it's really important to give them an idea. Like Dan Paff talks about shapes. You know, I love that. What's your start in shape? What's your finish in shape? And then everything in the middle will sort itself out, usually. But so with acceleration, with the squat, with the deadlift, if kids have an appreciation of what it should look like in their minds, the kids now film every bloody thing anyway. So they'll record their sets. They'll go, that doesn't look great. I need to change that. I need to change it, like I said, to a degree where it's acceptable. We're not form police. You know, we're not coaching technique. We're coaching the amount of weight you can lift off the ground a lot of the time, or the speed at which you can lift it.
Yeah, we're giving a lot of these extra techniques. Again, I think it's just a case of trying to make things that are quite simple sound more complicated to create a level of learned helplessness, like, which we don't need. Like, you know, if anything, you need to be doing less, you need to be worrying about less, but as long as you're doing it efficiently, like you're covering your bases, you know what you need to work on, and that's it really. Yeah, for sure. Okay, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, Matt. So last 2 questions, and they're not quick fire. I put them here and I always ask them, but they're not quick fire at all. What's a one-off change, the most effective one-off change that you think an athlete, and this is, we can't be specific, so just general athletes can make that will have the best payoff, so universally?
So if I'm going to, I wouldn't, okay, I'm going to say recovery. And it's really like, oh, yawn, bullshit. But again, the recovery thing, we got this camp over here. Some 21-year-old tell me they need to have 9 hours sleep and drink 5 liters of water and make sure that everything is homegrown. All my food is grown in my back garden and all my food's organic. And you go the other side then, you know, just sleep 5 hours a night and drink 1 liter of water and 20 coffees. You know, I've got a very simple approach to recovery. You get as much sleep as you possibly can, you know, without external influences. If you've got 3 kids, you're not getting 9 hours sleep. If you've got a job and a mortgage, you're not doing that. Don't talk to me about that. If you're a kid, you should definitely do that. I agree that hydration, nutrition, and sleep hygiene is a much overdone point, but it is the most important single change, you want to call that one single change being recovery, that you can make to people. So like my evening routine runs the same. I'm a routine. I like routine. Everything's done on the dime. So like this evening now, I will read to my kids and I'll give them 10 pages of Harry Potter. And then I will come down and I'll have my dinner, and it'll always be good food. I don't eat crap because food is fuel. And you know, that's all there is. There's no emotional attachments required to food. Just fucking fuel your body. That's all that matters. And then I'll sit down and my missus will watch some crappy TV and I'll do some static stretching, some foam rolling and some lacrosse ball work. which again is horribly unpopular with people because you don't need that shit. Come back and tell me when you're 45, son, if you need that shit. 1% is when you're 45, you get 10 or 12 of those, you're 12% different. That's a big difference.
Yeah. What book of Harry Potter are you on?
Prison, no, Goblet of Fire.
Oh, nice. Now we're getting into the real meaty stuff. Yeah, I'm definitely one that's guilty of that, like saying, you don't need the lacrosse balls and stuff because, again, these are people that aren't taking the big rocks of their recovery seriously. You've clearly got everything else as efficient as you can. You've got your routine down. You ask most people that, that do anything on the foam roller, what their pre-sleep routine is, they don't have one. They don't have a bedtime. They don't have a wake-up time. It's ad hoc. That stuff's not going to help you. But if you've got everything else in place,
9 o'clock is bedtime, and I read 10 pages of a textbook, and I read a couple of pages of a novel to fall asleep with. And that's the routine I have 6 days a week. Saturday night, I like to get sleep, have a kebab. But, there's no room for that. But yeah, that's the thing. The recovery stuff is well documented. Everyone talks about it. But give me a routine which you can feasibly conduct 6 nights a week and stick to, and all these little 1%ers then actually mean something.
Yeah.
But if you'd like 8 hours sleep, 7 hours sleep, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And then finally, what's one sentence that you could define your overall coaching philosophy?
I think philosophy is one of those words where when you're a young coach, everyone tells you need a philosophy. You've got to have a philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to have a trade. You've got to buy into something. And I remember saying to somebody I did a seminar a few months ago, and I said, look, if you're a young coach, you haven't got a philosophy. Just follow somebody you respect and nick theirs. For me, it was like Paul McGuinn to start with, and I went away from that. Then it was Mike Boyle, then away from that. But I took bits and bobs from everybody. My training template's the same for everybody, as I mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
If I was to have an ethos or a philosophy, I'd say if every general population gym goer or athlete trained like a professional rugby athlete, they'd be much better off for it. Because every physical quality you could possibly need as a human for longevity is in rugby. You've got aerobic capacity, you've got anaerobic, you've got power, strength, elastic, sprint qualities. There's no other sport for me that encompasses all the physical qualities that you required to be a really good, robust, strong, powerful, and fast athlete than rugby or union or league, maybe AFL, conversation for that. But there's no other sport really that gives you that really nice, well-rounded balance.
Couldn't agree more, actually. I think that's one of the biggest things. I've got a few athletes that are in their 40s, and I think that, part of the reason they still play rugby is to do this sort of training because they know it's important for life.
Yeah.
And I think that's absolutely, a lot of people get that wrong where they go, okay, I'll do rugby because that's what I need to do for my fitness and to keep my body in shape. And I'm like, okay, but that's a strange approach to do a really aggressive collision sport.
I'm just done saying, I want my kid to play rugby to toughen him up.
It doesn't work like that. It really doesn't. I actually thought, I thought for your overall coaching philosophy, you were going to say your Instagram handle, which we'll plug one more time at the end here. So jump, throw, lift.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That you would, which kind of encompasses the whole thing anyway. But yeah, if I was going to add sprint on top of that, but like it didn't really roll off the tongue. Like jump, throw, lift is okay. Throw, lift, sprint.
Yeah, it does. It takes a lot away from the name, actually, doesn't it? Totally.
But yeah.
Cool. Is there anywhere else people can go and find out more about your training, your coaching, that stuff, or is the Instagram the best place to go?
Yeah, I'm just on Instagram. I put a bit of content out. Not as much drops as I should, but yeah,
yeah, it's really good quality stuff, and you can see all of what we've spoken about today in action. I appreciate your posts. I think they're really good. So guys, everyone listening, I absolutely encourage you to go check out jump.throw.lift, correct?
You got it.
Yeah, it'll be in the description below. Thanks for joining us, Matt. This has been great.
Thanks very much, TJ. Great. Yeah, appreciate it.